Hello and welcome to math. Today we're going to learn about equations and inequalities. We're going to do multi-step equations and inequalities. First things first, let's learn about some inequality symbols. You should know these. This should be a review, so hopefully it is. But let's go over some inequality symbols. Okay, so here's like the inequality symbol words, right? So we have less than, and here's some words that you could also see for that. So less than, you could also see fewer than, below, beneath, right? And the way you would write a less than symbol would be like this. This reads x is less than 5. All right, if I was going to graph that on a number line, 5 would go somewhere in my number line. I would put like a number bigger than 5, a number smaller than 5. All right, this has an open circle because 5 is not included in the solutions, and x is less than 5, so then I want to draw an arrow to my numbers that are going less than 5. And that's how you would draw that on a number line. Less than or equal to, some words you might hear, are at most, maximum, and no more than. Right? So this is telling you that 5 is the biggest it can be. It can equal 5, but it can't be bigger than 5. Right? So if I was going to do this one on number line, now 5 can be part of the solution. So I would put the same numbers like this. Now 5 can be part of the solution, so I put a circle on 5, but then I would fill it in, because that tells me that this 5 can be a solution. But now I have to say x is less than or equal to 5, so I still want to make my arrow go to the left, because that's where my less than answers are. Greater than is greater than. So it's greater than. You can hear more than, you can hear above, you can hear exceeds. Like if you exceed the speed limit, you're going above the speed limit. And the way you would write that is this. This reads x is greater than 5. And if I was going to do that, 5 is not part of my solution. It doesn't have an equal to there, right? So anything that's not part of my solution is going to have an open circle. So I'm putting an open circle over 5. And then now it says x is greater than, so I'm going to go point my arrow to the right where the numbers are bigger. And the last one is greater than or equal to. Some words you could hear for that are at least. To be able to vote, you have to be at least 18 years old, right? So that means you have to be 18 or older. Minimum. The minimum drinking age is 21 in the United States. So you have to be a minimum of 21. No less than. To enter into this amusement park, you have to have no less than $50 to buy a ticket, right? Stuff like that. That's telling you that it has to be that number or bigger. Okay? So when it has an equal to, that means that solution is part of our solution. So x is greater than or equal to 5. That's how you read that. And then now on my solution on my number line, since it's equal to, I put a filled in circle on 5. And then I make my arrow go to the right because that is the numbers that are greater than 5. All right, hopefully that's a good review for you from inequalities from last year. So now we're going to solve some multi-step inequalities and equations. So the good thing about inequalities and equations is they are solved the same way, right? We use the same steps to solve them. The only difference is equations only have one solution, where inequalities have infinite solutions. Inequalities like x is less than 5, it can literally be any number less than 5. It could be 4, it could be 2, it could be -6, it could be 3.7, right? It could be any number that's less than 5. All right, so let's solve some inequalities and equations. All right, so the way I was taught to solve equations, and this always sticks in my brain, I think it's a really good way to memorize how to solve equations. You follow these steps, you'll solve every equation correctly, okay? And it's called Don't Call Me After Midnight. It's like a mnemonic device to help you remember the steps of solving an equation, okay? The first letter of each word of Don't Call Me After Midnight corresponds to what you have to do in math to be able to solve the equation, all right? So don't starts with D, and we just learned this last class. What starts with D in math? And that's distribute, right? So that means I'm going to distribute whatever is touching the parentheses to everything to the inside of the parentheses. All right, so let's do this one on the left here, this equation. So I have a negative here. Remember when we said there's no number there? It's really a 1. So that's really a -1 times x. So that would be -1x. And then a -1 times a -2. That would be a +2. I'm going to make this like a little skinnier. There we go. Okay. And then now I want to distribute, I have another set of parentheses. I have to distribute this, right? So I have a -4. Remember that sign in front stays with it. So this is -4 times 2x, which would be -8x. And then I would do -4 times a -3. Remember that sign in front stays with that, right? So a negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 3 is 12. And then I can bring down that equals 41. I'm running out of room here, but you guys should have plenty of room. And that's always our first step. Our first step is always to distribute. All right, my next step here, it says call. Don't call me after midnight. Call starts with C, right? So call starts with C. We just learned something last class that starts with C. And it's called combine like terms. So we combine our like terms, right? So remember, like terms have the same variables, right? And the same exponent. So I see I have a negative 1x. What can I combine that with? Well, I can combine this minus 8x with that, right? Negative 1x minus 8x will give me negative 9x. All right, and then I can combine my numbers. I have a plus 2 and a plus 12. Well, that will give me, if I add those together, that will give me a plus 14. I don't combine anything on the across the equal sign. That kind of just stays over there until we start doing inverse operations. All right, so we're just simplifying this side of the equation. This stays here until we start doing inverse stuff, which we're going to do soon. Okay, so first step, distribute. Second step, combine like terms. The third step here, we're not going to do today, but we will do next class, and that's called move variable to left side. So we will start having equations where there's variables on both sides of the equal sign. And when that happens, we just have to take the variable that's on the right-hand side and move it over to the left-hand side. And we'll learn more about that in next class. Okay, so I'm not going to move any variables to the left-hand side because my variables are already on the left-hand side. I don't have anything over here, right? So I can skip that step. My next step, it says after. Don't call me after midnight. Starts with A. What starts with A in math? It's add. So we're going to add or subtract. And we're going to do the opposite of what's happening to the constant or the number that doesn't have the variable. So I see right here that it is a plus 14, right? So I'm going to do a minus 14. And whenever I do the inverse operation of something, I have to do the same thing to the opposite side of my equal sign. I usually draw a wall here once I get to this step to keep my sides separate so I know, right? So I'm doing the inverse or the opposite of what's happening to my constant, the number without the variable. So I see it's a plus 14, so I'm going to do minus 14. Okay, so these cancel out. 14 minus 14 gives you 0, right? So those would cancel out, and that's going to leave me with negative 9x on my left-hand side. On my right-hand side, I have 41 minus 14, and that gives me 27, okay? All right, so my final step here is midnight. Don't call me after midnight. Midnight starts with M, and this is where I'm going to multiply or divide. Whatever's happening to the variable this time, I'm going to do the opposite or the inverse of. So this is negative 9 times x. When a number is next to a variable, that means times. So I'm going to divide by negative 9, and that's how I'm going to get my final answer. I'm going to do the same thing to both sides, right? Negative 9 divided by negative 9 gives me 1. That's what I want. I want 1x. 27 divided by negative 9, that's going to give me a negative 3. So now I'm left with x equals negative 3, and then that's my final answer. That's a negative there, negative 3. All right, and that's my final answer. So for an equation, my possible solutions, there's only one possible solution. It's negative 3. That's my only answer it can be. And the way you graph that on a number line is you just put negative 3 on there. You put a number that's bigger than it and a number that's smaller than it. And then you just put one dot on negative 3, and that's it. That's the only answer it can be. There's no arrow for equations. It's just a dot on top of your answer. All right, let's do this one on the left here. There's one left there. First step, distribute. So I see I have a 3 touching this parentheses, but I see there's a minus sign in front. So remember, that minus sign stays with that negative 3. So I'm going to multiply this negative 3 to both sides. All right? Or sorry, to both things inside the parentheses. So I'm going to be left with 2. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x, so minus 3x. And then now negative 3x times a positive 4 would be a negative 12. And then I still have that greater than 17. You can see it's the same steps, right? All right, so my next step here is combine like terms. What can I combine on my left-hand side here? Well, I can combine this 2 with this minus 12. 2 minus 12 will give me minus 10. It's a negative 10. So now I'm left with negative 3x minus 10 because I can't combine that x with anything. All right, my next step is move variables to the left-hand side. I don't have to do that right now because I only have one variable. If there was a variable on the right, then I would move it to the left. We're going to learn how to do that in next class. All right, but now I'm going to do my add or subtract. I do whatever's happening to the constant. Whatever's happening to the number that without the variable. So I see it's a minus 10, so I'm going to do a plus 10. Here's my wall here. Shh. So negative 10 and plus 10, they would cancel out. That gives me 0. That's what we want. We're going to get rid of that, right? And that's going to leave me with negative 3x here. 17 plus 10, I talked a little earlier there, that would be 27. Okay? My final step is multiply or divide. Multiply or divide, I do whatever's happening to the variable, I'm going to do the opposite of, the inverse of. So this means negative 3 times x, so I'm going to divide by negative 3 to both sides. All right, that's going to leave me with x on this side because these negative 3's cancel out to make 1, and that's what I want. I want 1x. And then now I have 27 divided by negative 3, and that's going to give me negative 9. Okay, so there's a special rule when you're solving inequalities. Whenever you multiply or divide by a negative sign, you flip it. Yeah. Okay, so that means whenever I multiply or divide, when I'm getting rid of whatever's with the variable and it's a negative, I have to flip my inequality sign. So my original inequality sign was a greater than sign. So now that I divided this by negative 3, I have to flip that and make it a less than sign. So my answer would be x is less than negative 9. And I can put that on my number line. I can put one bigger, one smaller. And then now this does not have an equal to sign underneath, so it's going to be an open circle. And its x is less than negative 9, so then I would draw an arrow going to the left. All right, so what are some possible solutions? Well, negative 9 is not a possible solution because it's not equal to, but it can be anything less than negative 9. So I could put like negative 10, I could put negative 15, I could put negative 127. Doesn't matter as long as it's less than negative 9. Okay, so that's how you solve a multi-step equation and or a multi-step inequality. Just remember the steps, don't call me after midnight, and you'll be able to solve either one of them. Just remember the special rule, if you multiply or divide by a negative sign and you're solving an inequality, you have to flip the inequality sign. If you want to know why, I have a video of that on my YouTube channel, or you can ask me in class. All right, if you have any questions, please ask me in class, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.